Anime. There's a ton of it everywhere you look, and for the most part, it increases by the year. But what about shows that define anime? Well, that could be for another video, but as for this one, I'll be talking about shows that you may or may not remember that went against the grain. Something that was very risky but had no reward. Panty Stocking with Garterbelt, 2010. Do you ever hear characters in anime curse? I'm sure you have once or twice, but it's not often. Anything offensive or derogatory? This is a show that does just that. You motherfucker! It breaks the mold of what you are and aren't allowed to say in regular anime. This isn't hentai as much as it flirts with that line. This isn't made in the US either, despite the English VAs getting more awards from the show than the Japanese ones. It's a show that makes South Park and the Boondocks look tame. Okay, maybe not the Boondocks, but it's a show where anything goes, verbally and visually. This was a time when anime wanted to branch out from one simple animation or art style, implementing some CGI, which you can tell is there to an extent. The way the CGI is used feels a lot like Kill la Kill, a much more popular show that came out just a few years later. All in all, Kill la Kill may be the closest thing we ever get to Panty and Stocking with Garterbelt, since a show like this may never come about in the current climate's landscape. When news broke of a second season possibly in development after a decade of silence, audiences were pretty split on whether it was appropriate to make. Whether this one gets made or not is up in the air. But one thing's for sure, it's in its own category, untouched since 2010. The only new shows that even somewhat relate to this are Has Been Hotel and Hell of a Boss. Anyways, there's cursing in every other sentence, and nudity that puts High School of the Dead to shame. By no means is this a show for everyone, but it did set a standard for ecchi series, something eclipsed only as of recently. I find it hard to believe we'll find a show this vulgar again. Akudama Drive, 2020. Neon lights, a dystopian theme, and thrilling action to boot. You may say this sounds a lot like cyberpunk edge runners, and I hope you do. The truth is, every recognizable show needs a predecessor to walk so it can run. At least in my eyes, this was that predecessor. Unlike almost anything for its time, which wasn't even that long ago, it made waves by bringing the genres of sci fi, thriller, and anti hero all together in an entertaining but most of all captivating ensemble. While I'm not here to spoil an adrenaline rush of a series, there are some generic pieces to the puzzle, from how characters act to the straightforward storyline. It feels like a result of trying to define a new meta. Gore is also a nice touch to any thriller, adding a bit of immersion to a flailing storyline if done correctly. It's overall a show that does everything it can to give you Blade Runner vibes, keeping you engrossed in the fast paced lives of criminals you can root for. Arakawa Under the Bridge. This may actually be the hardest show to explain to someone who's never seen it before.
てめえ今なんつった？緑だもの緑なものは緑だものつか外人の方とかじゃなくて人外の方じゃねえか
おい、その辺にしとけよ。
On the outside looking in, it's just a show full of characters living under a bridge and along a river that seemingly belong in a loony bin. The characters don't just influence the story, but dictate how every episode turns out. One main guy basically tries to reason with and logically guide his way through life under the bridge. He does it all to be near one girl. One main girl who's just as strange herself. In the most simple terms, this is a show where logic goes to die for the sake of comedy and because most of the cast is pretending to be the way they are. Pointing out the flaws in every character was almost the main guy's goal, but it led down a tedious and unnecessary road. He eventually learned that the sooner he could embrace the area, secluded from society, the better. Now, you may ask, why is this one on the list? It's not necessarily groundbreaking, it's just different. To that, you're completely right. It is just different, but what makes it so different is that it finds a way not to use generic tropes of any kind. It is truly its own masterpiece. No matter how hard you look in the recommendations section, you won't find a show even somewhat similar to it. Flowers of Evil 2013. Flowers of Evil had one of the most provocative and assertive stories many have seen. A show that dips from the usual anime art style, adding a more realistic look to characters for the purpose of adding an uncanny impact. Not stopping there, many vivid portrayals of a teenager's state of mind gets drawn into the equation. You could tell a lot of care was put into the art. Characters were built up and shoved to the ground, sometimes of their own accord, just to get across bitter feelings hidden beneath the surface. While by no means do I read manga, you can clearly see a difference between the ratings of the show and the book. Regardless, the show's ability to visually express social dissociation and bullying brings to life a more surreal experience. This is another series that could be a hit or a miss, depending on so many factors. What makes this one so different isn't the tackling of very hard subjects, but how truly honest and vulnerable each character was. What makes it disturbing is what makes it all the more real. Mysterious Girlfriend X, 2012. There is one immediate turnoff that everyone has to this one show. Being able to jump over this hurdle means you probably enjoyed the show, or at the very least gave it an unbiased chance. That would be the main two characters expressing their relationship with one another through tasting each other's drool. I am not one to deny how disgusting that is, but for the sake of explaining the series, I'll continue. The show dives deep into the aspects of newly found relationship and simply what it takes to maintain that level of closeness, respect, and affection. Drool may be gross, but it's the catalyst for determining who the main guy is truly in love with. Almost like how in Call of the Night, Nazna is able to know how Ko is feeling after sucking his blood.
Those emotions add variety to how your blood tastes.
To the same extent that bond is felt in this show, even used to prove true love towards the end. I do believe no show before this one had done anything remotely similar. All in all, these shows may not be the absolute top of the top, but they were trailblazers. Unrecognizable trailblazers that either were overshadowed or fell into obscurity. Let me know which ones you think do or do not deserve to be on this list. And as always, I'll see you next time.